Welcome to episode 44 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a PhD candidate in molecular science and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Aaron Aboud, Quality Assurance Manager at Trophy Foods, Inc., and is a member for the Board of Directors for the Ontario Food Protection Association, OFPA. Trophy Foods is Canada's leading supplier of high-quality edible nuts, dried fruit, and confectionery products. In this episode, Aaron talked to me about his role at Trophy Foods and how he ended up in a career of food safety despite first going to school for illustration at Sheridan College. We also talked about food safety programs and how different organizations deal with risk. Aaron also talked to me all about the OFPA and their mission to represent the industry, government, and academia by bringing together professionals in a forum to promote, educate, and communicate innovation in food safety. As well, Aaron talked to me a little more about the tone of the food safety community and their overall goal being to protect the consumer, no matter what company you're in. But more importantly, he talked to me about how the OFPA is supporting students looking to go into food safety through their student membership program, which offers networking events, student competitions, and volunteer opportunities. So, enough with that introduction, let's get on with the show. Excellent. So, thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on the show. I've seen your organization that you've been a part of in terms of food safety kind of float around on my LinkedIn, and I've really always been meaning to get someone on the show because you're doing some great things, and especially for students, which we'll kind of dive into. But regardless, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Veronica. I look forward to having this chat with you.
Excellent. So before we start to get into the OFPA, I think we have to get to know you a little bit better. So let's get started by talking about what you do in your food safety role at Trophy Foods, and I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. So I am the quality assurance manager here at Trophy Foods. I've been with the company since I think it was February 2019 is when I joined the organization. It's a fairly, I would say it's a medium-sized manufacturing plant. I've worked at smaller ones and I've worked at, well, I should say I understand there are much bigger ones. So I would think that we are medium-sized. Basically, what Trophy Foods does is we do a lot of different nuts, whether that they be roasted or raw, and a lot of confection and chocolate type products. So if you've seen in this on the store shelves, chocolate covered almonds, cashews, peanuts, butter toffee, peanuts, other nuts, things like that, trail mixes. That's what we do. And we have our own line of Trophy branded products, but the majority of our business is private label, making products for a lot of the major grocers here in Canada and as well in the US too.
Mhm. Yeah, no, they're definitely a big name around the area that I'm in. And I know that you have a very, if I'm not mistaken, beautiful retail store for some individuals around Christmas time. I know it's a favorite gift to give around.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we've had to, we thought long and hard, and the organization came to a decision to close down
Okay.
that shop. Yeah, it continues to be a very nice space. Right now that we're actually using that for an additional lunchroom for our staff as we're still trying to maintain social distancing and whatnot. But the plan for the future is actually to use that space for the center, what we call the Center of Continued Excellence. It's for our PD and R&D department. So we are going to redo that whole space, make a whole new kind of place for collaboration and training and education with our customers. So we find a lot of times when it comes to nut and dried fruit commodities, a lot of our customers, even though they're buying from us, they don't really understand a lot about the commodities that we're dealing with. There's lots of different varieties and different grades and things like that. So there's some teaching, which we find is helpful to provide for our customers. And as well, it'll be a place where they can run some pilot batches and things like that. So it's a really nice space, but yeah, it was a place that a lot of people like to go to pick up their favorite candied nuts. And unfortunately, that's been shut down because of COVID.
Well, at least you're making the best use of the space, and it really sounds like the projection of where it wants to go is a really great idea because that was something when I started working, when I did my first job, a full-time job working in a nut factory and learning about all the grading and all this. It was just so new to me, and it would be really good for customers to get to know that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we thought too.
We did learn about trophy foods, but what exactly do you do there?
Right. So, as the food safety quality assurance manager, I'm basically making sure that all of our product continues to be safe, and we want to just maintain the highest level of quality as possible. So, one of the things that we try to strive for is putting programs in place that those processes will take care of the product itself. A lot of times, we do a lot of end testing and things like that, which I think is more associated with quality control. But what we want to do is, go in there and be proactive, where we're providing an environment of continuous food safety training. We might get into a discussion about or surrounding food safety culture and things like that, promoting food safety culture in our organization, just getting the employees to understand, not only to provide them instruction, but as to why they are doing that. And that's, of course, to get consistency of their product whenever they're making things here. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that food is safe for the public. So I have a fantastic group of people working with me, food safety specialists, regulatory specialists, our quality assurance technicians and whatnot who are on the floor all times of the day. And we're basically just making sure that the processes that we have in place are being followed. And as such, we can confirm with and verify on, doing spot checks and some end of the line testing that the product is in fact meets those standards. And so that we have the confidence that our customers, they're going to love it.
No, that sounds amazing. And it's great when you have a good team because food safety is a team effort. It's definitely not one person and it's not just designated on your food safety team. It's something that the whole plant has to come together to do. And it's even, what's the word I'm looking for? It's even further encouraged when you have good teams knowing different aspects and it's not just on one person.
Right.
Mhm. So I was curious about, I do want to touch about food safety culture because I think that's going to be something that once a conversation I want to bring up later. But before we do get into that, I want to make sure that I get to know your story more so and just knowing the career steps you took to how you got to Trophy Foods. So would you be able to walk me through that, please?
Sure, absolutely. It's kind of I think it's an interesting story. It's probably not something that most people do with respect to how they end up in a science-based profession. When I was growing up from a very young age, I would say that I always had an interest with art and drawing and painting and things like that. I love Disney movies and I thought that I wanted to be an animator at a very young age. And all throughout I shouldn't say university, sorry, I haven't gotten there yet. All throughout high school, my classes were oriented around arts, visual arts, basically not sciences at all. I mean, I think in high school, there's a curriculum that we all must follow, and then you can choose some other courses that you're interested in.
Mhm.
Science was not something that I was taking because I necessarily wanted to, more so that I had to. I always wanted to be an artist. So when I first graduated from high school, I didn't get into the animation program that I wanted to at Sheridan College. My skills just weren't up to where they needed to be. I took a year off to develop my portfolio, and in that time, I actually worked for a number of different food manufacturing facilities, but just as a general laborer while I put my portfolio together. The next year, I did get in. I was accepted at Sheridan College for their illustration and graphic design program. And a couple of years into that 3-year diploma program, I realized I don't think that I have what it takes to kind of be a quote unquote starving artist. To be in any kind of visual arts, unfortunately, it doesn't always pay well, and you don't necessarily know when your next job is coming and things like that. And that's something that a lot of artists are aware of, and they probably have to support themselves with some other supplementary income. And I just thought, I like doing art, but I don't know that I love it that much to have a full-time job and then working on this as a full-time job as well, trying to, develop my craft. So I decided that I would continue and finish my diploma, but I knew that that wasn't going to be what I wanted to do in the future. After that, I was really into fitness my whole life, into sports as well. I was working as a personal trainer for a year, and I was talking to some of the my clients, and I said, I'm really into nutrition, sports nutrition, and things like that. I think that I'd like to work in nutrition or maybe a job related to nutrition. I actually had a client who was a professor at the University of Guelph in a nutrition program, and he said, listen, unless you want to go work uh, as a dietitian, for instance, maybe working in a hospital or an elderly care facility, which, those are very respectable programs and things like that. But that's not what I had in mind. He said, I would not necessarily go into nutrition. There's not as many opportunities. If you want to go and start developing an understanding of food, how food works, and perhaps maybe go work for a food supplement company, I would suggest going into the food science program. And as many would be aware of, the food science program at the University of Guelph, where I'm from and where I continue to live, is a phenomenal program. It's recognized not only in Canada but North America and probably throughout the world as an established, and it's a great program that is has a lots of successful graduates coming out of that program, and in fact, a lot of recognizable professors who are working for that program, and
For sure. No, the University of Guelph, even just the facilities, like when you walk into like I've been even though I didn't go to school there, I have been around the facilities and just it just sparks that creativity in the food and just wanting to get like dive deep into it. It's always been a little bit of my regret that I never went there for food science just because of seeing how the staff are, the professors. It's just it really is amazing.
yeah, it feels like even though it's a program that there isn't many universities and colleges who offer a very direct and specialized program like the food science program at Guelph, it feels very close knit and tight, and you do have a lot of support because it doesn't have. I went there during that year where they got rid of OAC or grade 13 in high school. So as I went back to school at that point, I think our class was double the regular size as that it would be.
Hmm.
And we still only had about 40-45 students in that food science program in the first year. So it's
Wow.
very small.
Yes. Yeah. Barely.
And which is odd because there are so many opportunities for food science graduates, especially here. I'm working Trophy Foods. Our one facility is here in Mississauga, and just around the GTA, it's just a hub of food manufacturing that there is just so many opportunities for food science graduates, either recent grads or people who've worked in the business, to work for a number of different companies, either directly in food manufacturing or regulatory. There's just so many opportunities, and that's why I was encouraged by a professor to look into that. And fast forward a few years into the program, I think everybody wants to go into PD. That's where it feels
Mhm.
very exciting. Everybody wants to be a product developer, and that's what I wanted to do as well. So my first job coming out of the University of Guelph was to work for ED Smith's in Stony Creek, and they do a lot of jams and other hot fill products. They also do sauces and whatnot. And I was a product development coordinator. So I got my hands a little bit dirty with respect to product development, but I was also just making sure that their PD lab was running efficiently. So I worked there for a year, and then I got another job as a PD specialist working for another sauce company, Giraffe Foods, who is in Mississauga as well. And I worked basically, they were a very small company at one time. So I was in their lab, not only operating as their PD specialist, but also doing all their QA testing. And as that company continued to grow, we started establishing more and more, quality programs and whatnot. And I just kind of geared myself towards looking after and building that program. So at some point, as that company continued to grow, they were hiring on some more PD people while I just stepped aside and became solely responsible for their quality assurance program. And it went from myself just working into the lab, and I think by the time I left that company after 12 years, there I had a team of, I would say, 12 people working in the QA department. So they've gotten
Wow.
quite big, and I absolutely just loved building a quality program from the ground up. So it was a fantastic experience to do everything from, your daily audits and your daily inspections of product to developing the internal auditing program. And at that point, that company, they were SQF certified under the GFSI certification. So developing and continuously improving their SQF program, and worked there for many, many years. And at some point, this opportunity at Trophy came up. And while I would have loved to stay at Giraffe, I still have a lot of friends and colleagues that I stay in touch with over there, and they're continue to expand. I just felt it was time to move on and take on a new adventure. And it's been 3 years here, and we continue to be on an upwards trajectory of continuous improvement and getting better every day. Quality assurance, just like every other aspect of food manufacturing, it never stops. So we're always looking for opportunities to get better, but as well, opportunities where I can, help my staff work more efficiently and work smarter and try to give them the tools to do the things to make sure, like I said, at the end of the day, the food is safe and the product quality is number one.
I love that. There's so many things I could pull apart with your story. And of course, like the first thing to point out is just the opportunity popping up from having training a professor. Like, I mean, that's just something. It's funny how your life takes you, but I want to more so point out about you mentioning that feeling of building a like a food safety program and bringing that up and growing it, because I think that's something that I don't think people really might think about the validation and how cool that really is thinking about it, because products can come and go, but food safety programs, they stay and just get better and better. And to be able to create a system and seeing it work, seeing it come into play, like I could imagine just that, because we think about food safety in the sense many times it can be very dull. It can be very, you're behind the scenes not getting the glory, but at the same time, to like build up a program, that's just really cool, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that a lot of times there's other, if whether it be this company or a lot of companies, I think that when there's, you land a big customer or you're able to ship out and meet, you have a certain target or goal of whatever that size of product that you want to get, or the dollar amount that's going to bring in for the company. I think there's a lot of other departments who get more of the applause for that. And you're absolutely right. QA, it's almost just like we're like the goalie. Usually what the goalie can do, and we hope that kind of never happens with respect to food manufacturing, is I don't want to be operating that we're making saves here. I'd like to, if we want to do a hockey analogy, since we're in Canada, I hope the program that we put in place is kind of like our defenseman, where it never gets to the point of the goalie that we're worried about a serious scenario. We already have the defenseman to kind of take care of those aspects. But you're right. The people who score the goals are going to get all the glory, and that's our food manufacturing team, which when we think about it, or when I think about this, is they're actually our first customer. So we've got external customers, we've got all of our big branded companies that we work for, but what we don't really consider, but I think that everyone would agree, that our most important customer too is our internal customers, and that's every other department that we work with internally. And so that can be operations, So one of the things that we will work with is developing their staff and their management to understand more about food safety and what that means and what that entails and how they're responsible for that. It could be, in our business, we deal a lot with commodities, various nuts and seeds and things like that. And we're at the we're at kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature. And especially during the pandemic, we have to deal with a lot of sourcing issues. There's supply and demand has been a big problem over the last couple of years, and even in the last year, even here in Canada with the different protests, and there's been rail issues and things like that. So we're looking at, okay, well, where else can we use a certain commodity in our manufacturing field to make sure that, while this wasn't brought in for this purpose, it's still going to meet the specifications and the parameters that our various customers are going to have for their end product. So we're working with every different department here, trying to make sure that we can support them in any way that they need, so that we can get product out of here at the end of the day.
One of the things that you mentioned is we're thinking about being proactive. That's the ultimate goal with food safety is you don't want to be falling back on something in terms of trying to prevent a bad product from growing out. You just want that bad product to never have even started. And
Right.
as building up a food safety program, like how do you get the foresight to even figure out without being reactive to anything? And maybe this can tie into that building a food safety culture. I guess I'm just trying to see where your mind's working and that type of thing.
I think with so I've been working, I feel like I'm aging myself, but I just need to kind of get over that and realize that while I think I'm young and I like to do things with my kids, but I've been around for a while, for many years now in the food industry. And I guess there's that expression with age comes wisdom, but I would say with age comes experience in my case. And the experience has been, when you're starting off, a lot of things seem very kind of black and white. Yeah, there's only one way for things to operate. And as you kind of grow within, especially the quality department, a lot of what we do, and I would think a lot of what most people do in food safety, is risk analysis. And I think that that's not something that is pushed as much as it could be from a very early on, maybe even to the point where, I'm trying to remember. And again, I am getting older, so I don't remember though whether or not we did any risk management or risk analysis courses in university. I can't remember, but that's not to say that they don't have them.
Mhm.
But it's something that we continue to try to engage not only our employees with and my staff, but as well with the quality departments of some of our customers, our big branded customers. So, you know, when we look at, whether or not we're talking about risk management, we're talking about whether or not how often something can happen and the severity of it. So the severity versus the likelihood and things like that. So, we develop a lot of programs and we say, well, you have to do something this way, but what happens if something breaks down and you've got a line to keep running, and you look at that risk of that product and it's not at risk, that piece of equipment is not going to affect the product, so can we continue to run and things like that. So we look at those types of experiences as to, well, we can continue to run if we put these other safeguards in place and things like that to make sure that our end product or our WIP product is not going to be affected. And that's something that, our new graduates, it's something that we're trying to encourage, to train, to kind of look at a situation. And really, when I look at food safety, a lot of food safety is kind of like common sense, which we know that sometimes common sense is more like common knowledge. But when you kind of do your training of those various courses that you can do with regards to HACCP and whatnot, when we put these things in place about hand washing and wearing hairnets and wearing gloves, and why at the beginning certain areas of raw must be protected from the end product and things like that, it really makes a lot of sense. So with respect to why we do those things, but at the same time, I think that we take it for granted that everybody in this, what we know is what all of our employees know. And that kind of speaks to food safety culture. So a lot of the programs, to go back to your question, so how do what's exciting about implementing these programs is not only, okay, let's look at this particular situation. Okay, how do we mitigate that risk? And how do we, put that process or that product back within its limit or back in control? But at the same time, okay, we just had a situation. What types of things do we need to put in place to prevent something like that from happening again? Now, is that a process that our employees need to follow? Is that a new piece of equipment or something like that? So, and a lot of that comes down to food safety culture, where our employees just don't kind of understand and they don't have that sort of knowledge base that maybe we take for granted with respect to HACCP and GMP training and things like that. So, even at home, on some degree, I follow a 5-second rule. And I think that a lot of people do as well, but that's just taking into account doing my own kind of risk analysis that should anything
Mhm.
happen, that's only going to happen within my own home. But I think a lot of those practices, if people aren't trained and do courses in this type of thing, they're not going to have that knowledge as to what kind of possible implications they might have with if they don't follow process or if they do something in a certain way that puts the product at risk. So not only are we trying to put these programs in place, but we're always continuously trying to do retraining of the people so they understand why they're doing it. Because we found as well, one of the things that we can be tracking is, okay, what is the number of similar incidents that have happened? And we see that those numbers go way down over time because people are following protocol. But as well, those people are now promoting food safety in the plant itself. So there are certain times of year where we are busier and we bring in temporary staff and things like that, and they have to go through some GMP and some line training, but they haven't had the amount of training to the degree that a lot of our regular staff have had throughout the year. So what we've seen is our staff are now, training on the line in real time, saying you need to do it this way or you need to do it that way. But as well, if there is any situation where they're now well aware of the risk and what could be the outcome, they're now coming to us and say, such and such happened, we want to let you know so that we can do an investigation. So it's
Wow.
really kind of exciting to again be pushing food safety, but also that education to our employees so they can start developing those programs and helping them on their own. The one of the other things that we do is we actually have our staff, all of our different operators who are manufacturing the different products or who are packing the products, they test all of their own product. That's something that we started a few years ago. And I think that I've seen practices both ways where you have, operators testing their product or you just have QA testing product. But one of the things that I've noticed is when you put these people who are in charge of their lines, for instance, in our situation, roasting equipment, these roasters, these oil roasters, there's a pride that they take with respect to their product. They want it to be good.
Mhm.
They know how to tweak their machines within our standards and our limits to make sure it's the best possible product forward. And on top of whatever testing they're doing, just to let you know, we're also the QA department will also go and test that product. But we found right away an immediate ownership and pride that the employees took with respect to doing their own testing and making sure that their product is okay. The amount of product that we needed to put on hold or the times that we had to stop the line, it stopped almost immediately when we started doing that. So that's a big win. And I would encourage other companies to try that out because I know it's worked for our last company too. And as long as you're doing some other checks afterwards, for some additional verification, I think you're going to notice a big shift with respect to people's understanding of food safety, but as well their kind of personal pride about coming to work and putting forth the best possible product.
That is really cool to hear, and it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't because, like you said, having your staff, they want to take pride into it, and it's like a proof of showing that they're able to do it. And I think as well, it's good to how do I want to put it? I guess my head is going in the just with the term risk. And you use risk, and it's interesting because I think risk can be a scary word, and as well when you're new, you don't have that experience to really identify this is per se risk. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I guess my whole head is thinking like the word risk, it is scary. And if you're not trained to understand really what risk is, like this is the situational, because we don't want to really be thinking that things are going to go wrong. And it's almost like an acknowledgement that, hey, things could go wrong and you don't really want to go there. But by acknowledging it, you're already like minimizing, or maybe not, but minimizing the risk, so to say, because you're planning for it.
Yeah, you have to look at, which risks are the ones that really impact your raw materials or your finished product, and kind of steer your priorities basically to making sure that those risks are mitigated. So, as a really, I don't know if this is a good example or a bad example, but I heard it, and I feel like it's pretty understandable, especially since I think there's a movie about this too with Leonardo DiCaprio. There's an asteroid coming to Earth, and I guess, if that asteroid hits Earth, it's going to be worldwide extinction, like cataclysmic. So the severity of that is obviously extremely high. So do you develop a program and plans in place for that type of risk? Because, in a food safety, with respect to food safety, the worst thing that you could happen is you could make a product that is unsafe for somebody to eat. It's going to make them sick, or worse. That's the worst thing that could happen. But you also have to look at the likelihood. So while there's some risks of certain types of product, like this is a nut manufacturing plant, and there's lots of risks that are still involved with nut manufacturing. Salmonella comes to mind. There's been outbreaks around the world with respect to raw material salmonella, and even, peanut butter and things like that. And but the risks are much different than a food manufacturing plant that actually, deals with lettuce or bag salads or meats and things like that. What works for one food manufacturing plant absolutely does not work for another. So you have to kind of steer your priorities and what you're doing towards the risks that you have. And I think that, and that's okay for the junior, the new grad who's coming in to not understand those. I would say that their first priority should be, I found a problem and I'm put this product on hold. Now what can we do with it? And then the next thing I would say, well, what's the risk if we continue to allow that process to keep going? What's the risk of that product? It's something, was there some kind of adulteration to that product or whatnot? And it's kind of just coaching the employees to kind of look and do that risk management that, hey, we didn't exactly follow the process, or we followed the process, but there was a breakdown in one of our pieces of equipment. And, what could be the possible outcome of that product? And that just comes with more and more experience. But you're right, you're not going to have that confidence to do that right away, because
Mhm.
you're going to be worried about, A, whether or not your customers are going to like it. For instance, if the final product testing shows that your bricks or your viscosity is out of spec, but more importantly, have you now, manufactured a product that doesn't fall within parameters or limits that makes it food safe? And, for sauces and liquid foods, that could be pH or salt and things like that. For other dried goods, it could be water activity. There's a bunch of different hurdles to kind of make sure that you either get over, or, steps in place to make sure, again, you're is safe. But, and then once we figure out, okay, we've mitigated that risk, now what kind of program can we put in place so that type of thing doesn't happen again? Because we don't want to be having to do risk management throughout our day-to-day job. We don't want to have to be putting out fires. So at that
Mhm.
point, you do kind of your root cause analysis, and you ask, a simple way of doing that is your 5 whys. Well, why did that happen? Well, why did that happen? And so on and so forth, until you get to the point where, we've identified the root cause. So let's put a new program in place, which will take care of that end product. We will have the confidence that as long as the program or the procedure is being followed, and we can verify and monitor that process, we have the confidence that that end product is going to be where it should be. And of course, we do some testing on that end product. And sure enough, it's the water activity is where it needs to be, the salt levels where it needs to be. It has the flavor or the appearance that it needs to have. And that's from having some incidents where things fell out of control, identifying those, addressing those, correcting them, and then working through a process to prevent that stuff from happening again. So I'm not really sure if that answered your question. I know that I
I don't
tend to
even
go
know
off
if
on
I asked a question, to be honest with you. I think we just started getting into risk, but this is where I'm going to actually go segue. Let's see if I can do this. So we're talking about experience and we're talking about risk. And one of the ways that I know you can get experience, or as a young graduate, or not per se be in the situation to get it, but is through getting mentorship and having these conversations with professionals that are in food safety. And this is where I want to segue to talking about the OFPA, because I could not go through this whole interview without talking to you about that. And it's one of the reasons I kind of wanted you on here. So, would you be able to tell me a little bit more about the OFPA and what you do there, and what this organization and why it's needed for our industry?
Sure. So, first, the OFPA, it's the Ontario um, Food
Food.
Protection Association. Sorry, I'm having a little brain lapse there. And we're basically a non-for-profit educational association, and we host a series of educational events where our members can share information and exchange ideas, make connections, and what I think is most importantly, you build contacts with other like-minded individuals. I know when I was working in, and make sure you steer me back because I'm going to go on a tangent again, but as part of PD, there's lots of events you can go to, lots of trade shows and things like that. Very exciting. You're going to these trade shows and you're trying different products and whatnot. But where's some place that you can go where they're only talking about quality? Like you said, it quality assurance, quality control, quality management seems very serious, not as quote unquote fun. So, what the OFPA does is it provides kind of an area where you have all these like-minded people in food safety and food manufacturing, regulatory, the CFIA, Health Canada. They are regulatory. They are regularly speaking and providing updates at our events. We have lots of people who obviously might be contractors or vendors who might be offering services like pest control or third-party microbiological testing, sanitation suppliers and things like that. So you have all of these different companies within this industry who can get together, and we can talk about what are some hot topics, and what are the industry updates with respect to manufacturing and regulatory, and where do we have a place that we can engage others and find contacts and kind of build a network of people that you can reach out to for whatever your need might be, whatever your gap. So going to these events, I know that's where I was able to find suppliers for some ATP testing, which is basically, it's a method to verify the effectiveness of our cleaning. It's a place where people can learn about what are the different companies out there that train on the different programs that might be available, certifications and things like that. Something that's important for students, and maybe you'll ask me later about what should students be doing, but getting certified, or getting training under their belt that goes above and beyond what you might learn in your university and college program. And for students, one of the things that we recognize obviously is students are you know our future. Of course, that sounds so
Well, it is true, but I mean, it is true, especially the mentality. We always say that in food grads, training the next generation for the food industry. So it might be silly, but that really is it.
Yeah. So, and we want to provide a place to engage students and connect them with various companies and various, training companies and things like that, where, they have a place where they can reach out for either mentorship for connections, for jobs, of course, and just for advice as to what are the next steps if I want to, become a food safety professional. So with respect to the OFPA, one of the things that we have done for many years is with all of the schools, we have connections with a lot of different schools who, have to some extent some courses related to food safety, regulatory, food design, even product development and things like that. So we have a lot of connections with schools in Ontario, and we were offering scholarships to those schools. So once a year, we would provide them with a certain amount that they could use, probably at this point, maybe to pay off some of their books and whatnot, but as well just give them a little bit of a head start and a kudos for doing such a great job within their program. But one of the things that we decided on the board was this really only helps one student. And because I'm a Guelph alumni, I'll say University of Guelph. This, we're giving an award to one person. There's so many people who are in the food science program or the microbiological program or a number of different programs at the University of Guelph, as well as a whole other number of universities and colleges in Ontario. And you're only helping half a dozen of those students. So we thought, well, why don't we just do something else where we offer those students a free membership to the OFPA, where they have an opportunity to receive our newsletters and our monthly e-blast. They can take place in any of the webinars that we're doing. In fact, we're actually hosting one today, and by the time that this gets aired, it will have been in the past. But the one that it's being done today is actually on risk management, and it's actually being done by my boss, Gordon Hayburn, who has been in the industry for a number of years, not only in food manufacturing, but he trains a lot of auditors and whatnot. So he's leading a webinar on risk analysis and risk management. So there's an opportunity where students can go to these events for free and learn about these things, but as well as make contacts with other like-minded individuals. So, there's forums for a lot of the virtual events, but coming to the live events, we host two major events every year, a spring event and a fall event, where we have a number of speakers. There's a number of sponsors who come and sponsor tables, and they show their kind of advertising their different products and services and things like that. There's obviously food. And it's just an opportunity for people to kind of connect with other peers that, well, I think a lot of them have become their friends, but not everybody knows everything. And it's an opportunity for people to ask other people, hey, what would you do in this situation? What would you do? Very different from sales and marketing and even PD. I think those things, you want to be the best at it and you want to patent your ideas and things like that. But when it comes to food safety, while I agree that, we're going to put things in place and we're going to get equipment here that's responsible and takes care of food safety aspects, that might be something that we want to keep private with respect to, the optimization of our plant, but we should be engaged in sharing ideas with respect to food safety. We all have a responsibility to make sure that all of the food that is being put out by any company is safe. Like that, I don't wish that. I wish everybody, can meet minimum food safety standards. We don't want to put anybody's lives at risk. We don't want anybody getting sick. And I believe that everybody feels that way. And so this is an environment where we can share all of those ideas together. And we just wanted to get students more engaged. So with the free student membership, we felt this is an opportunity for any student to come to any of these events for free, listen, get some more ideas, kind of engage, kind of talk with other people who've been in the food industry for some time and start their careers. We actually have a student who's on our board right now. He's just a recent grad, and we're kind of doing that deliberately. We want to engage more youth and get their perspective, obviously, on how we operate. So there's lots of opportunities for students probably to, if they wanted to volunteer with our program, but also, no, we want students to be in the decision making as to how we operate.
I really love that. And thank you for bringing in that insight about talking about being able to actively just have a community where you can talk about food safety, not about it's not about selling the product in the sense of you just want the food to be safe. And as a student, I really wish that when I was starting university, that I became aware of these organizations because I came from a chemistry background. And at my school, there was very much a focus on chemistry of like biotech and like all that type of stuff. And it was never something that interested me. I was always interested in food. And figuring out organizations, especially in the Ontario area, I know that there's like the CIFST and there's a few other ones, but for a student active community, I didn't really find there was a real strong, especially being at Ryerson, we have a food science and nutrition. Everyone wanted to be a dietitian. So all the networking events were focused on becoming a nutritionist, dietitian in that area. And
Right.
I was always paying attention to their feed to see if there was something food safety related. But if I had known that this was present, clearly now you're starting to do the great outreach, which is amazing. I think it would really foster that community that I think that students who might not be in a designated food program could feel welcome and a part of because sometimes in chemistry it's very broad and students don't know what to do with that degree. So
Yes, it's definitely more, it's very applied. And again, you mentioned that you weren't sure what you wanted to do in your chemistry program. It feels like it's one of those, industry secrets about going into food science, even though there is so much opportunity out there and applicable opportunity where
mhm,
you come out of that program and there is a demand for those individuals for coming out in the workforce. But versus other programs where I could see, I have a general biology degree, chemistry degree. Now, what do I do with this? But this is it's very applied. And so, yeah, we want to bring those students in and have them make connections.
mhm,
So that's the biggest thing is I know that I'm on a regular basis looking for students to hire, but I imagine, and I'm not alone in that. If I can talk a little bit more about our student outreach, one of the things that we were considering doing was doing a job fair for students, but we kind of, had a few meetings about this, but we just thought, well, unfortunately, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you were, for we'll say Amazon, I know that they're in this area as well,
okay.
and you're opening up a new facility, you could have a job fair because you're going to have all of these open positions at one time. And the problem with a job fair for us to put on is if I need to hire somebody, I need to hire somebody right now, not 2 months from now when we're going to organize this event. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of people agreed with that as well. But with that in mind, where can we promote jobs and opportunities for our students? So we're, I would say the OFPA is transitioning because there are so many changes with respect to, trying to get over COVID and how we present our different events, whether or not they be virtual and in person.
I think that's great. And I think as well with students joining the OFPA, like it's already sounding like it's a community and it's a little niche. And just by even being a part of it, you're able to open up having conversations with it and just organically maybe finding jobs and just learning about where you can go and take your skills.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we're promoting too in our spring event, which is going to happen in a few weeks, is we have a student event. Typically, it's a poster event. So a lot of times you'll go to if you went to any of these conferences related to food science, or I mean, if you were in chemistry science,
Yep. I'm preparing
whatnot.
one right now.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to prepare, you've done a thesis and you've done your research and you're going to prepare a poster to present at these events. And we got the idea when during COVID, well, we can't really do a poster. So how can we engage students and have them kind of, you know, enter into something that they can promote and advertise their work, but not in a physical space. And one of the things that we tried was, I think some people might have heard of is it the 2 minute or 3 minute thesis? It's
Yeah, they're actually doing it tomorrow at my university. So
Yeah, so that's a contest that they do worldwide where they give students 3 minutes to basically and I believe one slide
Yep.
to talk about whatever research that they have done, and just to kind of, discuss the learnings that, that they have, but for maybe to like kind of a layman group. So somebody who's not maybe well versed or a lot of education in that particular program. So we thought, well, why don't we do the exact same thing here, where we have students create a video, a 3 minute, maximum 3 minute video where they talk about their own research during that time. Now we're doing, I think, a maximum of 3 or 4 slides, but it's only 3 or 4 slides where you're just going to maybe show a couple diagrams or a couple pictures or flash a big sign or something like that to, provide all of the attendees that information that promotes whatever research that you've been doing. So it's a fun and engaging event. I've already received a number of different abstracts from students and universities. We've narrowed that down to the finalists. I'm going to be waiting for those videos to come back in, and we're going to be showing them at the event on April 14th at our spring event.
That's going to be
So
amazing. Wow. Will those be able for the public to see, or will it just be limited to inside the event?
So, well, what we noticed was there wasn't a lot of interest this year in a virtual option. We were advertising this spring event to be in person and virtual, and everybody just signed up to come in person, which I think is, kind of telling as to where we are right now with respect to the pandemic. We're we're feeling like we're over it. We want to see people again. So doing virtual, it actually is a lot of work. So we decided, well, we're not going to do virtual if we don't have anybody who wants to, to come on that platform. So those videos are going to be shown on that day, and all of the attendees will be the ones who are going to vote on the winners. There's first, second, and third place winners, but I think we're probably going to offer something for all of those who submitted and were finalists. But as well, those things are going to be saved on our OFPA YouTube page.
Okay.
And on our YouTube page right now, you can also see last year's winners. So we're using those as examples for all of the students entering this year's. Last year was our first year that we tried this. It was a huge success. The students knocked it out of the park. They couldn't have made these things any better with really not having too many resources to use as reference. So we're now using those videos as reference. Do them like this. This was perfect. So, and those will also be on the OFPA website on our student page.
And I'm going to make sure to show that on the show notes of this page. So if anyone wants to access them, they can have a good understanding of what this is looking like. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our hour, and this conversation has really flown by. And I wish we had another hour to keep on going because honestly, the amount of information that I picked up and just learning more about you and what the OFPA does, it really sounds like this is the group. If students even remotely interested in food science, then they should definitely be signing up because it seems like why wouldn't you if it's the membership's free right now? So I guess
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. So I'll make sure to link that, and I'm really happy I'll be able to promote that. So thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on the show. I really love this conversation.
Thanks very much. This was a lot of fun.
That was episode 44 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads blog or by clicking on the Student and Grads tab on the homepage. There, you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself, or maybe a specific career path you would like me to explore? Then reach out to me and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. Hope to hear from you. As you might have heard on the podcast episode, OFPA has been on my radar in terms of networking events and how they are supporting students with their membership program. So it was really good to get Aaron on the show to give some more detail around it. It's really cool to know that there's this community out there who really care about food safety and what would they do. I strongly encourage any students listening to check out the OFPA and their membership. It sounds like they're doing some really great things, and if you're a student, it could really benefit you in terms of your career journey. The industry is always looking for passionate individuals to create and support the food systems that keep us safe. But as well, if you are also in a program that isn't directly related to food safety, this could also be a really good chance for you to get your foot in the door in terms of this whole sphere. I wish that I had realized that this association was around when I was early in my career. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.